Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right, and yet life stands still? You meditate, you journal, you pray, you visualize, you read all the right books, follow all the right steps. You wake up early, set intentions, repeat affirmations. You're trying so hard to become better, to heal, to align. And yet, there's still that invisible wall, still that quiet ache in your chest, still that feeling of being stuck. Maybe no one sees it. Maybe on the outside, it looks like you're thriving. But deep down, there's a whisper you can't ignore. Why isn't it working? What if the real block isn't what you're missing, but how tightly you're holding on? What if all your efforts, however well-intentioned, are actually a form of control? An unconscious attempt to bend life to your timeline, to prove you're enough, to force something into place that was never meant to be forced. This video isn't here to give you more to do. You've done enough. It's here to invite you into a space you may have been avoiding, the space of stillness, of allowing, of remembering. Because maybe, just maybe, your next breakthrough isn't hiding in another hustle. It's waiting in your surrender, not giving up, but giving in to something deeper, something wiser, something that has been quietly waiting beneath the noise. So I ask you now gently, honestly, can you pause for a moment? Can you soften your grip, if only for the length of this video? Can you let go of the need to fix and instead just feel? This isn't about quick hacks or surface-level motivation. This is a conversation with your soul, a mirror held up not to show you who you should be, but to remind you of who you've always been. If you see yourself in these words, if any part of this resonates like a forgotten truth remembered, then take a breath with me. And if you're ready, subscribe no for the numbers, but as a declaration, a promise to yourself that you're done running in circles. Let's walk this journey together, not chasing, not forcing, but remembering, step by step, breath by breath. This is not the beginning of effort. It's the beginning of becoming. She was exhausted. Another night, wide awake under the weight of her own expectations. The soft light of her bedside lamp flickered against the pages of her journal, page after page of affirmations, intentions, desperate prayers scribbled with hope and frustration. She was doing everything right. She had read the books, followed the routines, repeated the mantras. She lit candles, drank green juice, repeated, "I am enough," even when her chest felt hollow. Her days were filled with back-to-back podcasts, morning routines, visualizations, vision boards, deep breathing, goal setting, and still, something wasn't moving. Still, she woke up with that same tightness in her chest. Still, she looked at the ceiling at 3 a.m. and whispered, "Why?" This isn't just her story. It's the silent story of so many. Hustling for healing, grinding for alignment, proving worth through productivity, chasing success, happiness, claritias, if they were prizes earned through self-discipline and sacrifice. We've been told that to have the life we want, we must do more, push harder, keep striving. That ease is weakness. That surrender is failure. That stillness is laziness. And so we run faster, louder, further believing the breakthrough is just one more effort away. But what if the very act of chasing is what's blocking the becoming? What if the constant grasping is a signal not of progress, but of panic? Carl Jung said it clearly. What you resist persists. Not because life is cruel, but because energy cannot be deceived. When you force alignment with a clenched fist, you're telling the universe, "I don't trust. I don't feel safe. I don't believe I'm already enough." So life reflects that right back to you. Not as punishment, but as an invitation to go deeper. Think about how many times have you worked yourself to the edge of burnout, convinced that this next thing, this next practice, this next plan would finally deliver the peace you've been chasing. And how often did that peace slip further away the harder you tried? Because you weren't seeking from stillness. You were grasping from fear, grasping, pushing, proving. 3 words that have become the silent religion of modern spirituality. We tell ourselves we're aligning. But really, we're negotiating. We're saying, I'll be okay once I get this. And energy doesn't respond to words. It responds to truth. Now breathe. Let the pace slow. Let the striving soften. This is not an attack on effort. It's a revelation of misdirected energy. You see, true alignment doesn't arrive when the to-do list is complete. It begins when your nervous system no longer needs external proof to feel safe. When your identity is no longer built on the illusion that you must earn what was always meant for you. That's not laziness. That's wisdom. It takes radical courage to stop performing, chasing, fixing, and to ask the deeper question, what if my trying is the very thing in the way? What if surrender isn't quitting, but choosing a higher intelligence? What if letting go isn't a step back, but a leap forward into a different kind of power? Because the truth is, when the doing stops, the becoming begins. When the proving pauses, the psyche starts to integrate. And when the clenched fist opens, the universe finally has room to respond. So ask yourself, not with judgment, but with gentle honesty, have you been hustling for something that can only arrive through stillness? And if so, can you dare to stop? Not from fear, but from faith. Not because you're giving up, but because you finally believe you don't have to fight for what's already yours. So here's the question you might have been avoiding, but it's the one that matters most now. What if you let go now because you're tired, but because you're ready? What if surrender is not the end, but the beginning? What if you let go now to lose but to receive? And if that possibility sparks something in you, if even part of you wants to believe it's true, then stay with me. Because in the next chapter, we're going to look at what you've really been chasing, and more importantly, why. You think you're chasing love. You tell yourself it's about connection, about wanting to be seen, about the beauty of sharing life with someone. But if you dig a little deeper beneath the curated longing, beneath the vision boards and the daydreams, what's really there? You're not chasing love. You're running from abandonment. You're not seeking a partner. You're searching for safety. You're not craving intimacy. You're craving reassurance that you won't be left again. And that's the deeper truth no one wants to face. We don't chase desires. We chase the anesthesia for our wounds. When you obsess over money, is it truly about wealth? Or is it about finally feeling in control after a childhood filled with instability? When you grind for success, is it about impact? Or is it about proving your worth to someone who once made you feel small? This is the hidden architecture of our longing, the blueprint that no vision board can rewrite. Because behind every goal we glorify is often a pain we've buried. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Let that sink in. If you don't bring your inner wounds into awareness, they will continue to control your decisions, your relationships, your self-worth. And you won't even realize it. You'll think it's fate. You'll call it the universe. You'll convince yourself this is just how life goes. But the truth, it's not life. It's your unhealed self running the show. And no amount of chasing can fix what hasn't first been faced. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're not manifesting wrong. You're just misaligned because you've been trying to fulfill a soul need with surface solutions. And that's okay. You see, no one taught us this. We were raised in a culture that worships the chase. Chase love. Chase money. Chase dreams. And if you catch them, maybe then, maybe just maybe, you'll feel complete. But the wholeness you're longing for? It doesn't live out there. It lives in the places you've avoided, the memories you silenced, the fears you denied, the beliefs you inherited but never questioned. And until you meet those parts of yourself with compassion, you will keep running toward things that you think will save you, only to find that they can't hold the weight of your pain. That's why the relationship never feels secure. That's why the money never feels like enough. That's why the applause always fades too fast. Because your energy isn't saying, "I am whole." It's saying, "I am still afraid." And the world responds to that vibration, not your words. So let's pause here. Not to shame you, not to make you wrong, but to invite you into something far more honest and healing. You're not too much. You're not asking for the wrong things. You're simply being asked to look behind the desire. Ask yourself, with as much softness as you can, what am I really running from? What am I trying to prove? What wound am I trying to fix with this dream? You might be surprised at the answers, and even more surprised at the relief that comes from finally telling the truth. You see, the chase only feels necessary when we haven't yet acknowledged the hurt underneath. But once we do, the game changes. You begin to see your desires not as problems to solve, but as signals from the soul. You start to understand that you don't actually want more. You want to feel enough. You don't want to be chosen. You want to choose yourself. You don't want more love. You want to feel safe inside your own skin. And when that shift happens, when you stop chasing and start facing, the anxiety quiets. The fear loosens its grip. The need to prove yourself dissolves. And in that space, something extraordinary begins. Alignment, not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped lying to yourself about what you were really seeking. So now, just for a moment, breathe and ask yourself, if I stop chasing, who would I become? Because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about letting go, not as a failure, but as an act of awakening. He says he's over it. He tells his friends he's moved on, that he doesn't care anymore. But every morning, before the sun fully rises, his fingers are already reaching for his phone. 30 times a day, he checks for a message that never comes. He rewatches old conversations, rereads silences, hopes for a sign. And still, he insists, I'm detached. But detachment isn't pretending not to care. Detachment isn't deleting their number and secretly memorizing it. Detachment isn't avoiding the name while still obsessing over every invisible thread that might pull them back to you. That's not peace. That's performance. That's not freedom. That's emotional addiction. And until we understand this difference, we'll keep confusing numbing with healing. We'll keep calling denial a form of strength. We'll keep telling ourselves that silence means sovereignty, when inside we're still screaming. True detachment doesn't mean you no longer desire. It means your worth is no longer attached to the outcome. It means you can hold the dream in your heart without gripping it in your fist. It means you can want something and still be whole without it. And that's where real power begins. Because most people don't want the thing, they want what they think the thing will fix. They don't want the relationship. They want relief from loneliness. They don't want success. They want permission to feel enough. They don't want clarity. They want the fear to stop. But when your energy whispers, I need this to be okay, the universe hears that. It doesn't respond to your Instagram post, your vision board, or your spoken affirmations. It responds to your frequency. And if your frequency is still drenched in desperation, if your nervous system is still coiled tight around the hope that something out there will save you, then you're not detached. You're dependent, and no amount of pretending will shift that vibration. So how do you begin to truly let go? Not by numbing, not by scrolling, not by chanting that you're fine when you're not. You begin by returning, by turning inward and asking, what part of me still believes this thing will complete me? And then not shaming that part, not exiling it, but sitting beside it, witnessing it, holding it. Because healing doesn't happen through force, it happens through seeing. And once that part of you finally feels safe to exist, without judgment or suppression, something quiet begins to unfold. A softening, a stillness, a knowing that you're not empty, you're not broken, you're not behind. You're just learning to separate your identity from your outcome, to stop building your self-worth on the shaky scaffolding of other people's choices, to stop defining your peace by something you can't control. That's the wisdom of detachment. Not apathy, but trust. Not indifference, but inner stability. It's the calm, quiet confidence that says, I've done my part. Now I surrender the rest. Not from defeat, but from alignment. And yes, it's terrifying at first. Because when you stop obsessing, everything feels quiet. And that silence can feel like loss. But in reality, it's just space. Space for something real to enter. Space for you to remember who you are without the craving. Space for peace to breathe. So take a moment now. Not to push away your desires, but to hold them lightly. Ask yourself, gently, if this never happens, will I still be enough? And if your answer is no, that's okay. It just means there's still more of you to meet. Still more of you to love. Still more of you to reclaim. Because when you finally know that you are already enough without the message, the job, the approval, the persona, everything changes. Desire becomes devotion, not dependence. Manifestation becomes magnetic, not manic. And life begins to respond. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped resisting it. So here's the invitation. Let go, not to lose, but to return to yourself. Because if you still believe that this one thing will make you whole, you're still in bondage. And your freedom lives on the other side of that illusion. In the next chapter, we'll explore what happens after you let go and nothing happens. The sacred void, the silence, the space where your next self is quietly being born. You've let go. You've surrendered the gripping, the planning, the endless checking. You've stopped trying to make it happen. You've whispered to the sky, I trust. And for the first time, you've meant it. But nothing happens. No shift, no sign, no miracle. You wake up, and the world looks exactly the same. Your phone doesn't buzz. The door doesn't open. The heart still aches quietly in the background. And so a new fear begins to grow, not the fear of losing control, but the fear that maybe letting go wasn't the answer after all. Maybe you misunderstood surrender. Maybe it was a mistake to stop reaching, stop chasing. This is the void, the space after effort, before result. It's the silent field where nothing moves, yet everything is becoming. It's where your ego dies, but your soul hasn't yet emerged in full form. It's the space where the noise falls away, and the only thing left is your awe, quiet, unsure. And in our world of instant results, of dopamine hits and immediate feedback, the void feels unbearable. But the void isn't a punishment. It's a purification. It strips away what you thought you needed. The reassurance, the external signs, the validation, the illusion of control. It unhooks you from the addiction to movement and asks a terrifying question. Can you stay here, in this silence, and still believe something sacred is happening? Because it is. Carl Jung once wrote, in all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. And this void, this stillness is the sacred architecture beneath the surface. What looks like nothing is, in truth, deep internal reorganization. Your nervous system is recalibrating. Your unconscious beliefs are rewiring. Your soul is detoxing from the illusion that your worth is tied to outcome. But here's the catch: you can't see it happening. And that's where most people sabotage everything. Because the ego hates the unknown. The ego wants proof. It wants confirmation that the surrender is working. And when it doesn't see results, it tells you a lie. This isn't working. Go back. Try again. Chase harder. And just like that, the seed you planted gets ripped from the soil before it can root. But if you can stay, if you can resist the urge to fill the silence, to distract yourself, to grasp again, then the void becomes fertile ground. Stillness becomes magnetism. Silence becomes clarity. And you begin to align with what you couldn't reach through force. The void is a test, not of your strength, but of your faith. Can you embody the energy of the outcome before it arrives? Can you feel abundant before the money comes? Can you feel loved before the relationship manifests? Can you feel free while nothing outside has changed? Because if you can, you collapse time. You turn waiting into becoming. You activate a different kind of creation that doesn't hustle but harmonizes. And slowly, without warning, something shifts. Your body feels different. Your choices become calmer. The obsession fades into presence. And from that presence, life begins to respond. Not urgently, not dramatically, but organically, gently, honestly, powerfully. But none of that can happen until you stop interrupting the process. So let this be your reminder. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean nothing is happening. Just because it's quiet doesn't mean it's empty. You are not being ignored. You are being reformed. In this void, your old self is disassembling, and the new self stronger, wiser, freer is quietly being built. So breathe. Stay here. Don't run. Don't reach. Don't panic. Let the silence hold you. Let the stillness wash over you. Because you are not falling into nothing. You are being pulled into your becoming. You are not in the dark. You are underground. Rooting, reshaping, reclaiming. You are not stuck. You are sacredly still. And in that stillness, a new you is rising. Quietly, invisibly, unstoppably. This is not the end of your journey. This is the space between breaths. The pause before the song begins again. So stay. You are not falling apart. You are coming together in a way the world has never seen. And soon, it will. There is a quiet difference between wanting more and being whole. It's subtle, easy to miss, but it changes everything. Wanting more says, I need this thing to feel okay. Wholeness says, even without it, I am enough. And this is the turning point most people never see. Because for so long, we've been taught that desiring more is the same as evolving. That craving is a sign of clarity. That if you can name it and chase it hard enough, it will become yours. But here's the truth. What you obsess over isn't always what you're meant to receive. Obsession is not creation. It's contraction. And what you're really doing, when you can't stop thinking about something, isn't aligning with it, it's separating from it. You're confirming, again and again, that you don't yet have it, that you're not yet there, that there is still something missing. But integration begins the moment you stop needing what you want and start becoming who you are. That's the real work. Integration is not glamorous. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It doesn't always come with breakthroughs or tears or spiritual highs. Most of the time, it feels like stillness, like quiet clarity, like the first deep breath after years of trying too hard. You no longer feel the need to chase because you've realized the thing you were chasing was a reflection of your own fragmentation. And now you've come home. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. He didn't teach that we become whole by adding more. He taught that we become whole by making peace with what already exists, by reclaiming the lost parts of ourselves, the ones we've shamed, hidden, denied. Your insecurity, your doubt, your fear, your sensitivity, your anger. These are not mistakes in your system. They are messengers. And when you stop seeing them as problems and instead begin to integrate them as parts of your truth, your frequency changes. Suddenly, you're no longer trying to attract love to prove you're lovable. You already know you are. You're not working for success to validate your worth. You already feel it. And that inner shift dissolves the obsession. Because the obsession was never about the desire, it was about what you believed that desire would fix. Let that sink in. You don't attract what you obsess over. You attract what you've made peace with. That's why someone who is calm, clear, and rooted often receives without struggle. Not because they've hacked the system, but because they've stopped trying to manipulate it. Their energy is clean. Their identity isn't built on craving. And life always responds to clarity. So if you find yourself thinking, I still need X to feel okay, pause. Not to shame yourself, not to force yourself into false positivity, but to gently ask, what would it feel like to already be enough? What if I didn't need to earn it? What if I didn't have to prove anything? What if I just allowed myself to be whole? Because in that question, you begin to shift from obsession to ownership, from lack to presence, from proving to being. And that shift doesn't shout, it whispers. That's the quiet miracle of integration. No more reaching, no more fixing, just a steady, embodied return to who you were before the world told you to chase your worth. In the next chapter, we'll go even deeper, not into what you want, but into what's still inside you that believes you're not already enough. Because true manifestation doesn't come from the persona. It comes from the parts you've been afraid to face. And when those parts are seen, accepted, and integrated, you don't need to ask anymore. You simply become. She wondered why love never stayed. She tried. God. She tried. She dressed the part, played the role, learned to text just enough but not too much to appear interested but never needy. She read the books, watched the videos, followed the rules. But no matter how perfectly she played the game, the ending was always the same. Alone. And every time she told herself it was bad luck. Wrong timing. Immature partners. The universe testing her. But the truth? She wasn't being rejected. She was rejecting herself. She wasn't being blocked by fate. She was afraid to receive. Because deep down beneath the surface confidence, beneath the curated self-growth, there was a quiet belief that whispered, "I'm not enough." A voice planted years ago, maybe by an absent parent, a betrayal, a moment of shame. And no matter how much she tried to hide it, it was still running the show. This is the part no one tells you. The life you want isn't being held back by the world. It's being held back by the version of you that doesn't yet believe you deserve it. And no affirmation, no technique, no law of attraction hack can override that truth. Because energy doesn't lie. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And he was right. It's terrifying. Because real acceptance means facing the parts you've built your whole life trying to avoid, the guilt, the shame, the grief, the parts of you you've spent years covering with perfection and performance. It's easier to blame the outside, to point at timing, circumstances, other people. But those are just mirrors, reflecting back the frequency you're sending out. You're not being blocked. You're protecting yourself from receiving something your subconscious still feels unworthy of. You say you want love, but your nervous system flinches at intimacy. You say you want success, but your self-concept is still wired for scarcity. You say you're ready, but part of you is terrified that if you get what you want, it'll leave. Or worse, you'll mess it up. So you chase and self-sabotage. You try to prove your worth while quietly reinforcing the belief that you have none. It's a painful loop, and it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to break it. Because the moment you stop asking, "Why isn't it working?" and start asking, "What part of me still doesn't feel safe to receive this?" everything changes. You stop negotiating with life and start reprogramming your identity, because your identity is the gatekeeper of your destiny. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you believe you are. And if, deep down, you still believe you have to suffer before you can be loved, you will recreate that story again and again. Not because the world is cruel, but because your soul is waiting for you to remember. You don't have to earn what is already yours. So stop blaming. Stop begging. Stop hoping someone or something outside of you will make you feel worthy. Look inward. What if the only thing standing between you and the life you want is the version of you who doesn't believe it's safe to hold it? And what if that version is ready to be seen? Because once you see her, once you hold her without judgment, once you tell her she's enough, even without the achievement or the love or the validation, everything starts to shift. You don't have to prove anymore. You don't have to chase. You simply become the version of yourself who no longer blocks the very thing she's been asking for. That's the real work. And in the next chapter, we'll dive even deeper, not into becoming more, but into reclaiming the parts of you you've disowned. Because shadow work isn't optional. It's the doorway to everything you say you want. She thought she was healing. She had discovered manifestation, vision boards, daily affirmations. She wrote intentions under the moonlight, spoke gratitude each morning, raised her vibration with crystals and calm playlists. She told herself she was aligned, that she was doing the work. But deep down, something still felt off. There was a tightness in her chest when she said, "I am worthy." A flicker of doubt she couldn't shake. No matter how many times she wrote her dreams in a journal, they didn't come true. No matter how many times she visualized love, her relationships still crumbled. And the money, when it came, left as quickly as it arrived. Because what she was really doing wasn't alignment. It was avoidance. She wasn't manifesting. She was masking, trying to color over the wounds with glitter, trying to speak light into her life while ignoring the shadows inside her. This is what most people misunderstand about manifestation. It's not about perfection. It's about integration. You cannot attract from a fragmented self and expect wholeness in return. Carl Jung called this the shadow, not evil, not broken, but simply the parts of yourself you've pushed away. The fears you hide, the shame you carry, the anger you suppress, the beliefs you've absorbed about being too much or not enough. Shadow isn't darkness. It's what lives in the dark because no one ever taught you how to hold it in the light. And until you turn toward it, it will keep shaping your life from the background. You'll manifest relationships that trigger your abandonment wound, jobs that validate your unworthiness, outcomes that mirror your fears, not your dreams. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because it's reflecting your energy. You cannot lie to your vibration. You cannot script your way out of what you refuse to feel. And here's the truth. Most spiritual circles won't say out loud, you can't manifest real love if you secretly hate parts of yourself. You can't manifest abundance if you still believe you are fundamentally unsafe. You can't attract peace if your nervous system is wired for chaos. You don't need more positive thinking. You need radical honesty. You need to ask, what parts of me have I been too afraid to meet? What belief still whispers, you're not ready? You don't deserve this. You're not enough. Because only when you see those parts not with judgment, but with compassiondo, they begin to loosen their grip. Only then does your frequency shift from desperation to dignity, from pretending to presence. That's shadow work. Not fixing yourself, but remembering you never needed to be fixed. Not banishing fear, but allowing it to soften. Not denying pain, but letting it speak so it no longer screams. And that's the secret most miss. Manifestation doesn't begin with desire. It begins with integration. Because when your energy says, I've made peace with who I am, life no longer needs to test you through mirrors. It begins to reflect your wholeness, not your wounds. So if things keep falling apart, don't just ask, what do I want? Ask, what part of me still doesn't believe I can have it? And don't shame that part. Sit with it. Learn from it. Love it. Because the moment you stop hiding from yourself, your life stops hiding from you. That's not magic. That's alignment. And in our final chapter, we'll return to the deepest truth of all. You're not here to manifest who you think you should be. You're here to remember who you already are. You were never here to become anything. You were here to remember. All this time, you thought you were manifesting, creating, building something new, trying to call in a future version of your life that looked more whole, more vibrant, more free. But what if the truth is even simpler and more profound? What if you're not manifesting a better you? You're uncovering the real you. Not a version shaped by wounds or conditioned by fear. Not the identity built from other people's expectations or your own survival patterns. But the original self, the one that existed before the proving, before the pleasing, before the pressure to be more. The self that knew how to be still. The self that knew how to trust. The self that already felt whole. Carl Jung never promised transformation through addition. His work wasn't about becoming more. It was about remembering who you were before you forgot. Before life taught you to chase love instead of embodying it. To earn safety instead of resting in it. To seek meaning in the external rather than feeling it from within. Everything you're searching for: peace, love, worth. Abundance is not a destination, it's a return. A return to alignment. A return to truth. A return to self. But the path back isn't always easy. Because on the way to remembering, you'll meet everything that made you forget. The heartbreak that taught you to close. The criticism that taught you to hide. The scarcity that taught you to hustle. And that's where the real work happens. Not in doing more, but in unlearning. Not in forcing life to deliver, but in releasing the noise that blocked your ability to receive what was already there. Think of it like a radio signal. The frequency of your soul has always been broadcasting. But the static, the doubt, the fear, the shame, the performance has drowned it out. Now, as you peel back the layers, the signal gets clearer. Not because you've created something new, but because you've finally silenced what wasn't you. And from that clarity, life responds. Not because you mastered some secret trick, but because you became a clear channel, a match. Not for the things you thought you needed, but for the truth you always carried. You don't need more steps. You need less noise. You don't need to chase alignment. You need to become quiet enough to hear where you already are. That is the remembering. That is the return. So let this be the moment. Not when you set another goal or visualize another outcome, but when you realize you are not broken, you are not lost, you are not behind, you are already whole. You've simply forgotten. And now, you've remembered enough. Now it's time to rest in that knowing, to stop asking, to stop reaching, to breathe, to receive. Because the version of you that's still chasing is the one who doesn't yet know. It's already here. And when you drop into that truth, reality has no choice but to meet you there. So if something inside you shifted, if a part of you softened, settled, or sighed in relief, honor that. Not with performance, but with presence. And if it feels right, declare it not to the algorithm, but to your soul. Comment below. I have remembered myself, not for attention, but as a message to your unconscious, as a homecoming, as a vow. This is not the end. This is the return. You're not manifesting. You're remembering.